Hi! Surviving childhood as a military dependent. I happen to be in the middle of my mandala garden filled with corn because that's exactly what I didn't have in the military. And I'd like to talk about that. I'd like to really gather any military people, any wives who are confused, any young people who are old enough to talk to me who are confused, who want to know what it's really like to be a military dependent, and how I look back on it now as something that had both fabulous things about it and horrid things about it. And yet, like any other business, and the military is a business, there's a language. There's a culture, there's a connection that occurs when you're in the military, and it's a family. We moved so much between my second and third grade. We moved 22 times in 22 months. General Curtis LeMay was called Curtis the Homewrecker LeMay, and that's why. It was around the Cold War and after Korea and all these things were going on, and I don't know what he was doing. I really don't. I'll never forget, we moved into Washington, D.C. one afternoon. The next day, my mother put me in school. They said she had to buy my book, 2 books. She bought the books, and they told me I had to put my name in them. And she blessed me the rest of my life for doing that, because the next day we got orders out and they wouldn't take the books back. And she was furious, told me about it for years. Isn't that crazy? But that's the kind of thing that a military kid puts up with that another kid wouldn't. And another kid would have corn. I was born in New Mexico and always wanted to go back to the farm. And now I finally have it. And it's so funny because as a military kid, I never had roots. And that's why now it's just so vital to me to have roots. Roots just mean everything to me. And I think back on my life in the military, and I see what I got from it too. So I'd like to talk to any military people, any comments you have, reaching out to me, reaching me on the internet, reaching me on Zoom. I'm happy to talk to you, because one of the things I always experienced was loneliness. I was an only child. My mother had a boy after me, but he was dead in 4 days because he was Rh negative. Back then, they didn't know about exchanging the blood and keeping the child alive, so he died. And she never forgave me for being born female, and it was a hard thing because I was always with my parents. It was just me and them, traveling around the world, camping. Dad always saved the money that they gave for hotels, so we camped. I learned about land, and that's the part I loved. I loved the camping. It's crazy, because that's not the kind of thing that most military kids put up with. And I saw 23 states by the time I was 8 years old. I never met a stranger. I learned how to be around adults. Learned how to be the new kid, the funny new kid who was tall. I was real tall. My mother was 6'1". I was very tall. I had a Polish name, Zaleski, right after the war. I heard every Polish joke you could ever imagine. It was difficult. It was always being the new kid, always not knowing anybody. I had no contact with aunts, uncles, cousins, relatives, grandparents, nothing like that. I was always just the new kid popping in and out of places, and couldn't have pets. That's why I have noisy dogs now, because I couldn't have pets. I had a turtle. That was a challenge. I used to hold him in the back seat of the car and try to keep him from not something happening to him. It was hard. That was hard. But did I learn a lot? Yes. Did I have challenges? You betcha, boy. I had so much trouble with phonics because I was in 7 schools in 9 months in 2nd grade, and that's when you learn phonics. You learn how to pronounce things. And I'd have the teacher'd say, y'all get over here and let's listen. And then I'd go up to New Jersey and they'd talk through their nose. I mean, it was just a real nightmare because I really couldn't grasp that aspect of math. Was easy for me because math is the same. They don't have to pronounce the numbers especially, but phonics was a real nightmare. And that's part of what you get from being in the military. The other thing I got that I love so much, I wasn't afraid. I lived on base most of the time. Sometimes we didn't live on base, but usually we lived on base. And I really didn't have to be concerned about feeling safe. I never felt safe at home. I honestly, I tell you, I never felt safe at home. My mother, after she lost the boys, she just hit the bottle and that was it. She was real toxic towards me because she wanted 6 sons and she had 1 girl. And she didn't want to adopt. I don't know why, but she didn't. So she was stuck with 1 girl and miserable. And so and Dad was usually gone. He was on TDYs most of the time. He was in SAC, Strategic Air Command, so he was the SAC refueling team. So he was always gone. And she was really miserable. And I never felt safe because she beat me a lot. And she was inordinately verbally abusive. She always told me, God made all mothers love their children, but they sure don't have to like them. And that was really clear. She just did not like me. She wouldn't teach me things. She never paid attention to my schoolwork or my homework, or she never read to me, or any of those things that mothers usually do. I was not nurtured. And that's part of the reason I love teaching so much now, because I feel like I can nurture people this way. And here I am, third chapter of my life, the end of my life, and I'm teaching, and I love it. I just love it. It's really fun. But those things are hard. And my dad would come home. He had PTSD from the Korean War, so he was oftentimes a flare-up out of nowhere, and she would encourage him to beat me. And so I spent a lot of time missing school, not only from having rheumatic fever, but from being bruised. And yet, when I went out, I always felt safe. There were MPs around. I was on base. I rode my bike everywhere. I was at the pool. If the pool was open, I was there, cold or not. Took life-saving classes. I loved it. I actually, at the age of 12, I saved a 16-year-old dependent. It was an amazing experience to feel so safe. And there was the teen club, and I would go there and play pool. And I always felt safe among other students and people. And I think of what kids are going through now, and it's so very different. So very, very different. Okay, we had a commercial break there to shut the dogs up. Hopefully that will work. Surviving childhood as a military dependent is about mom and dad understanding what's confusing for the kids. I was always moving, and I understand that they're not doing that right now, that most people get to stay 2 years someplace. I can't imagine how wonderful. As far as schooling is concerned, I was a kind of a bully in kindergarten because I'd been raised in that military environment where sticking up for yourself was really important. Especially my dad had come back from Korea with PTSD. And PTSD is a real challenge for a child because they don't really understand what's going on. And I'm sure that you feel the same way if your spouse has PTSD and you're trying to figure them out. It is difficult. It's very difficult. And it's very difficult for a child because they can't understand why small things will trigger the person, a mother or dad, whoever was away. And that's got to be explained in some way, mostly by just telling the kids you're sorry, it wasn't their fault. I think that's the part that was so hard for me. I always felt it was my fault. My mother always made it my fault because I was the girl, and the girls weren't wanted. But I think if you could just tell the child, this is not your fault. This is something else. This is part of my service to my country. And that's the thing that always has kept so strong in my heart. My father served in World War II. He served in Korea. My uncle served in Vietnam, as did my husband. My son was in the Army, fortunately not during wartime. He was a Russian linguist. So my family is military. That's what it is. But it's taken me years and years and years of reading and researching and academic papers and books and anything I could find to help me understand the effects of war and the effects of no control. You have really no control. I remember my father used to have a suitcase, a flight case right by the door. And he had something like 24 minutes that at any time they called him day or night that he had to grab that and go get in the airplane. It was a tough situation. That's very different than civilian life. And I think it's very important that the child understand that. But the good thing for me was I felt safe. I always felt safe at the teen club. I always felt safe riding my bike around on base. I never had any incident that made me uncomfortable. All the years I was, I think for 2 years, I was in the American Red Cross program for swimming. I swam 5 miles, and I also took all the training for life-saving. All those times I felt safe. And I hope that's still the situation, because I think there's just too much time when the child doesn't feel safe, and they feel very different, especially if they're going to public school. They need to be assured that your parents are in service. Whether or not both of them are in the military really doesn't matter, because the other spouse is supporting the spouse who is in the military. So it's very, very important that the children know they're serving their country, because that's what's held me together all these years, is the fact that these are the disadvantages of serving the country. The person is angry, and the person is short-tempered and distracted, and sometimes depressed. And it has nothing to do with the child. And I think that's vital, because especially if the couple ends up divorcing, the child always feels like it's their fault. And it's not. It's because it's so difficult being a military dependent. It really is complicated, but in retrospect, I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry at all. I'm not sorry my father was military. I'm sorry my mother was an alcoholic because she lost her child. But it had nothing to do with the military. That had everything to do with her. I mean, Dad got out of the military because she wasn't getting pregnant. She was only 21 when they married, and he was 24. And after it took him 6 years to have me. He thought maybe it was the stress of the job, but no, it was because my blood wasn't compatible. So try not to blame things on the military. I think that's really important. Don't tell the child that you have to blame things on the military. I always felt fortunate, because when other people I was going to school with didn't have free medical care, I did. If I stepped on a rusty nail and it went through my shoe and I had to have a tetanus shot, there was no problem. If I needed my teeth checked, there was no problem. Now, I understand that's not quite the same now. I don't know how it is, but there were so many things, and there was a steady check coming in, and there was a teen club to go to, and there was a pool to go to before that. All of those things added up to, this is what you get because you serve your country. And I think the feeling, even as a child, of being a part of holding together a beautiful country of the United States is so incredibly vital for the child to hear, because otherwise the kid is sitting there thinking, oh, I really did something weird, or I made it harder for my parents. I also found the other military kids were the kids I liked to be with the most, because they understood the things that that I understood. They understood base housing. They understood always hearing airplanes, because Dad was in the Air Force. When I was at Fort Dix, though, it was Army, Navy, and Air Force all in the same place. I believe it was Navy. Now, I'm not sure about that. But I knew I have a lot of friends who were Army, and my dad was Air Force. And yet there was so many things in common. We were tough. We were tougher than other kids. We knew how to stand up for ourselves. We knew how to deal with strangers. We were much more worldly. We had a much better attitude about things. We understood that the commissary and the PX was for us, and it was subsidized, and that things were less expensive there. Including cigarettes. That was a real challenge. You know, when I was a kid, cigarettes were 19 cents a pack on the Navy when they were away from the base. And in the base, they were 25 cents a pack. And I understand they're up to $50 or $100 a carton in a lot of states now, which is good. I agree, because I got hooked on them, and it was all part of that. I'm part of the military, and I'm part of helping save the world, and that's important for a child. A child needs to hear that. They really need to know that they're a part of making what's happening. They're a part of protecting our democracy and protecting our country and keeping us safe. That whole feeling of safe is so desperately important. I can't emphasize that enough. As an adult, I continue to be concerned about, am I safe? And it was because there were so many times in my home where I didn't feel safe. Not in the military itself. I felt safe. And I think I was taught, if I saw a military uniform, I could always go up to that person and tell them that my father was a military man, and they would help me. I think that's really important, that camaraderie, that community. Even though you move away, you so often come back and you find the same person, and it's so marvelous. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for coming to this today. And if you have any questions or comments or anything, you're just below, you can put it down there. And while you're down there, maybe you'll look at our Summerland Volunteer Artists. It's our webpage where we're trying to encourage people to recognize that the earth needs to be respected. And that's something I think you have to teach kids too. My father sure did, because all the time we camped from one base to the next, he was always teaching me about taking care of the earth, and I hope you're doing the same. Thank you for being here. Bye.